Yes. I mean, this is...
I mean, it's great. They even got the little yellow handle for the camera deploy. They've got the probes, the contact probes correct. They've got all of the antennas in orientation, downlink radar, the rendezvous radar and all that. They've also got all of the handholds for spacewalk and egress correct.
Man.
I mean, it's excellent. The SPS engine's correct. Looks like it kind of got a couple of things that got knocked off, but overall it's still pretty much intact. But it's, I mean, look at the probe. It's even got the spurs on them for contact on the ground. It's the detail is superb. All of that was provided through the David Weeks diagrams. You may have seen. I don't
Yes,
know.
yes.
He exhaustively has researched all this stuff out and allowed us that opportunity to build things accurately.
Wonderful.
So it was interesting though when the guys first started on that. They was in the shop looking at it, and they were starting on the command module. They're still very early. They had some notes on it.
Right.
I looked at it. I thought, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And the command module was a Block 1. It was like the Apollo 1.
Very
right?
different.
So
Right.
it's very different. And they, stop! this is not going well. And so that's when I left them a note, said, call me, and we'll talk about the differences between them. And then suddenly, hey, then I got my name on the thing as a consultant because it was we wanted to get it right. So then they started calling me on the thing, and they're smart. They know what to do. But the thing is that they do mostly aircraft, historical aircraft. This is their first space subject ever. And to come out of that and do it so precisely, I thought was a wonder. It just shows how good they are.
They did a wonderful job with that. I mean.
So, I mean, the details are there. We've got here, you'll see when you compare our command module with, say, this depiction of Apollo 11, you will see the differences in the command module. Each one was slightly different. So if you want to do an accurate depiction, you really got to drill down to the details.
That's why I wanted to get good close-ups of the re-entry, scorching, and everything on this.
Oh, awesome. Here, I'll show you a couple of other details. Some of the things that are of interest. Now, you remember Apollo 13 and the great urine dump?
Yes. Oh, yes.
This would be the urine dump right here.
Okay.
Starting with Apollo 9, there are actually two. There are two of these for wastewater and a urine dump. They separated the two of them for whatever reason. I'm not asking. They're not telling. So it was separated out. So you can tell that this was the early, because there's only one of these rather than two. I think this is just a depiction. This is how it actually should look, more of a copperish color. This spacecraft, of course, was the very first, so a lot of stuff was removed from it to check for performance testing. How well did it perform in space? So this spacecraft isn't quite as fully articulated as some of the later ones, because all that equipment was all brand new. Some of it would be repurposed and used on other missions. Most of the time it was just evaluated and then improved upon. So it's pretty cool stuff. This spacecraft was launched on a Saturn 1B, which was the Earth orbital version for the Apollo program.
That's a short one over there.
Yes, right, and it's a two-stage. Yeah, here's what it looked like at launch.
Right.
The Saturn 1B was used, was kind of a Frankenstein rocket when it first came out. It was operated from a Saturn 1. If you look, you'll see all of the tankage on here. It was very different from everything you've seen then or since. And really what it is it has mercury redstone tankage on the outside, alternating tanks. Of course, it's modified for use with tetrazine and liquid oxygen.
Right.
And then on the inside, in the very core, is a Thor tank core in it. So yet from another rocket. The 8 engines underneath are based on an uprated S3D engine type that was used for the Jupiter IRBM engine. It was uprated to the H1. So you can see each time you keep adding stuff that has proven itself in space.
Right.
And the reason why is we didn't have a lot of time to flight rate everything. We had to get to the moon before 1969 ended.
I know.
So this enabled two things: to get us into orbit relatively quickly as far as a manned crew, but more importantly, to test all of the Apollo hardware in Earth orbit before going to the moon. So you could put a lunar module only inside, let's say, without the command module, launch it unmanned, test its performance, which was what did happen. Apollo 5 was an example of that. The command module, of course, was tested unmanned in Earth orbit originally. After the Apollo 1, there was the 2.0, I can't remember, but they hadn't given them Apollo designations. They had Apollo Saturn designations up to that point. So the other thing, too, is that they had an uprated S4 stage, S4B stage, which is this part. You could also test it as well, because this is going to be your third stage on the Saturn V. When this mission was over in October of 1968, so the 50th anniversary is coming up next month.
I know, this is why I'm here today.
Really? Wonderful. So this is the very first one manned to go into orbit. The mission was so successful. With these three astronauts, we accomplished more as far as all the experiments and testing and everything than all the other missions, Earth missions combined. So you kind of have to decide what that is, because there were some pretty audacious missions in the Gemini program. But from the sheer number of experiments, shakedown on the technical capabilities of the spacecraft and all of that, this thing, when it launched into orbit, was by far the most complicated American spacecraft to ever fly.
That's true.
Up to that point. So it was very important. So this 11-day mission came home triumphantly. Crew was returned safely. All of the systems pretty much checked out. Apollo 8, which was the next mission, was planned to be an Earth orbital mission. And when Borman and Lovell and Anders were tasked for that mission, they got a change sometime before their flight, which was, you're going to fly for two different missions. The one is Earth orbital for Apollo 7. Anything that fails on Apollo 7, you'll do on Apollo 8 and more, right?
And they did.
Or, we just thought we'd let you in. You can go to the moon. So, they're training for both. Ultimately, Apollo 7 ran very well. The only thing bad that happened to the three astronauts ended up sick from cold. It's the first time anybody had a head cold in space. So Apollo 8 was ready to go, launched on a Saturn V rocket with the success, and they went to the moon for 10 days in orbit in December of 1968, which was, at that point, we pretty much had won the race to the moon. The Russians had not launched anything even close to the Saturn V. The N1 blew up on the pad 3 different times, so it was not really what you would consider reliable. So even if the Soviets were able to get that N1 up, they didn't have a lander quite ready yet either.
That's right.
And they could only do a free return if they had gotten that far, and they didn't even get that far. So by actually going into orbit around the moon, we pretty much said, well, if I can orbit the moon, I can land on the moon. So finally, on Apollo 11, after 2 more test missions, Apollo 9 and 10 to test the lunar module in orbit, and 10 in lunar orbit, Apollo 10 actually flew the Apollo 11 mission profile, took all those pictures that gave us all the detailed information they would need for the following flight, Apollo 11. So NASA was very, very, very aware of what was going on and how it went about. The mission was called for Apollo 8 C prime. All the Earth orbital missions, which there were only 2 of the Apollo program, were called C missions. That meant that they were Earth orbit only. Apollo 1 was a C mission as well. So H missions went to the moon. J missions were the ones that flew with the rover, and also the service module on the Apollo mission also contained a scientific package that went into what previously was an empty bay on the spacecraft. It was empty because of weight restrictions. They had reached the maximum level, and they decided, well, we can equalize everything out. What they ended up doing is on this Saturn V is, in order to get more stuff to the moon, you have to take stuff off on Earth. So they started removing things from the vehicle. You'll see here these Illich rockets. There were 8 of them originally when it flew on Apollo 4. Which was the first Saturn V unmanned mission. By the time we got to Apollo 11, we'd reduced these to 4 for weight, And all these things did was provide additional separation for the stages as they went to orbit.
Right.
By the time we got to Apollo 15, they had removed all of them. And they just used, well, gravity will take care of it, so the separation was less, but they considered it acceptable. Also, down here there are retro rockets, 2 each inside the fairing underneath here, hidden underneath. That would help separation between the Saturn 1B first stage and the Saturn 2 second stage. So it was or not Saturn 1B, but the S1. I just had a brain fart there, but
it's all right. We all have them.
So if you watch, and this is something interesting you might find, watch the difference between Apollo 11 stage separation and Apollo 12. You will see that as Apollo 11, when you're following the tracking cameras, they separate and they pull away from one another like this.
Right.
On Apollo 12, they separate and the first stage just hangs there and hangs there. And when the second stage fires, you see the deflection coming off the top of the first stage. This is because NASA decided on Apollo 12 to remove half of the retro rockets inside of here. And so it's
slower.
It's a lot slower, and it was way slower than they had calculated. They were a little nervous when this flame is coming off because there's still fuel in there. I decided it would be a good idea to put the retro rockets back in. Sometimes even rocket scientists don't quite get it right.
I understand. I work with a few.
So that was another thing. What was the last thing I was going to tell you on this? There were missions 18, 19, and 20 that were supposed to fly. Richard Nixon, after Apollo 11 was successful, canceled the last 3 missions of the Apollo program. During the time that they were mulling all of this over, weight savings was still a bigger deal. One of the things that we did is we went from just a few hours on the moon to 3 days on the moon. That means supplies for both the command module and for the lunar module simultaneously. More weight. How do you get rid of them? See the fins? You'll note that on Gemini, Mercury, even the shuttle, with the exception of the vehicle itself, no fins. That was a requirement of Wernher von Braun. He felt that the rockets, should they lose power, they would still maintain stability with fins. Plus, that's what we always saw in all of the movies, right? All of his rockets had fins, so this is what he felt was important. What they found were these engines, the F1 engines, were so reliable, they gimbal back and forth to provide stability, that even if they lost complete power, the vehicle would still hold true to its position. So their final solution was to remove the fins for Apollos 18, 19, and 20. And had they flown, they probably would have flown without the fins. So it's kind of an interesting what if that would have occurred, and that would have given them additional weight savings for supplies. Now this is the Saturn V that flew the Skylab. Probably recognized
with that shroud,
with the shroud. As you know, the mission itself was in jeopardy as it went to orbit. What a lot of people don't know about this mission to orbit was that it was one of the few that did not have tracking cameras on it, or I've never found any, as far as what was going on as it went to orbit. And we all know bad things were happening as it was going to orbit. First of which, the micrometeorite shield had deteriorated and started raining down at supersonic speeds onto the side of the vehicle. That knocked out a few systems. One of them was, as you probably have remembered, the ring, the interstage ring, between the first and second stage, and there's always that classic shot of the thing falling away and tumbling down. On Skylab, this ring did not fall away. The explosive package was disabled because of all that raining down of stuff. It screwed up the electronics. And the second stage actually dragged this ring to orbit with it.
That's a lot of weight.
That's a lot of weight. You know, the Cape Kennedy controllers and Houston are looking and going, the engines are heating up much more than they expected. And they did not know why until after the stage separation and the workshop got into orbit. Skylab sitting there with temperatures going up and not enough power to do much of anything.
Right.
So they later went back, read through all the telemetry, and found out this was one of many things that went horribly wrong as it was going to orbit. It's very fortunate the thing didn't blow up.
It really is.
You think about it, stuff coming down and raining on the rocket, probably during maximum dynamic pressure, which is, 90 seconds into the mission? That's probably when all the really serious damage was going on.
Right.
That would be when most pressure on the vehicle.
Well,
When the micrometeoroid
we
field
lost
was
Challenger
defeated,
then, too.
that's exactly for that reason. Because they'd go at throttle up. It was just right after maximum dynamic pressure, and that's when everything just kind of went bad very quickly. So I had a chance to see this launch. It was the last of the Saturn V, and I was very excited. I'm glad I did. So maybe soon. They have the SLS launch umbilical tower went out to the pad last week. So we're getting back into the biz. I'm really looking forward to that.
yeah.
All right, I'll let you go. I hope you enjoy it. We do have some Skylab articles, so maybe for his modeling. All of this came from SMU, where they were part of the program back in the 70s. So 1973, this is some of the training stuff and prototype things that they used. Have you been to Houston yet?
I have been to Houston, but not recently.
You need to go back if you can. They do have the 1G Skylab on display there. You can go inside of it, and it had been out rotting and out on the property over at Houston, but it's been completely restored. They have put a one of the 3 flight simulators used for the command module is hooked to it so that you can kind of get a feel for it. It is massive, and it's inside and protected. You walk in and you go, holy crap, this thing is big. And they got the whole thing on display. So it's the largest display you can have. The backup, of course, is the Smithsonian in Washington. Maybe you've seen that, maybe not.
No, I haven't.
But this one is a few hours away.
I haven't been east of the Mississippi.
It's all good. We've got we have the first A7L suit here, Don Isley suit. This is a training suit. Everybody wonders if you're a super geek. You'll notice it has the NASA worm from 1975, I think, 4 or 5, 74, I guess.
Well, it takes a while to train.
Yeah, but this mission was in 1967, so we're all asking the same question. How did that get there? We don't know. Time machine, I guess. But it's a legit suit. An Isley suit. It's missing the Apollo 7 logo, so we think it's an early suit. It may have been used for testing purposes. We don't know, because we do know that a lot of the Apollo hardware was used on the Skylab mission. So it may have been that they decided to use Isley's suit for a demonstrator thing and added the logo.
They have a way.
They have a way of doing that.
Yeah.
We're very well known, as you can tell from this. And even Skylab has a Gemini hatch on the side of it that was for the.
That's right.
You remember?
Oh yeah.
Still had the rendezvous window in the side of it, which is crazy. But if it works,
hey,
use it.
They needed an egress hatch, and it was just the right size.
Already designed, man-rated. Why not? Right.
Yeah.
So that's something that never really gets a lot of airplay with NASA. Everybody thinks they build everything from scratch. Not always.
Not always.
Sometimes it's more expedient to use something you got rather than just trying to reinvent the wheel when you don't need to. So I always love that. And if you look at the LUT that's been built, it looks it's a little bit smaller, of course, but it looks every bit like the ones that they used on the Apollo. I mean, it really does. And it probably is. Why wouldn't it be? You know? We already know that the shuttle program used the upper part of those towers anyway, so they retired them and built new, but you go back and you look, it's the same thing.
Well, if you already got it, that's a lot of iron.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of steel.
36 stories in the air material.
Recycle what you can.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
Save that dollar for something man-rated.
Yeah, exactly. And that's money that can go somewhere else.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Well, I'll leave you alone. Have fun in the museum. If you have any questions,
I do every time I come in. The train. that. I mean,
Wright Flyer, huh?
That's a Wright glider.
Reproduction. That's
No?
the Flyer.
Yeah, it is a Flyer. Okay,
It's
yeah,
a
I see the
reproduction.
prop.
This was used actually in an ad for Braniff Airlines back in the 70s. So
Oh, wow.
it was given to the museum from Braniff Airlines way back when. So YouTube has it. You can watch the thing. You'll see it in the ad that they have on display.
In a Da Vinci parachute.
Yep. So, now, if you're doing stuff for your it's space modeling, so I don't know how big they would be with aircraft, but all of the aircraft stuff you see in here, every one of them was built in that shop. So you may want to look at that.
I'm definitely going through, and because I'm a flight nut, have been ever since.
I can tell.
Ever since I watched this on TV.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
Apollo 11. I remember watching them grainy old photos.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Watching
The wonderful footage
and everything. It was fantastic.
I mean, what it did for the world, actually.
Yeah, you know, we always say this. Every generation says that. It's too bad you kids didn't see this when you were growing up, because it had a world united at a time when the world wasn't united.
That's right.
And it was very important, and it had a. I'm looking forward to First Man and seeing it. I saw another preview for it yesterday, a new one with Armstrong going in and trying to land over the crater. It's a very quick scene, but it is quite well done. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope that it sparks some kids into a next generation as pilots or scientists or explorers, astronauts. I think that's going to be a great thing if they can do that and pull it off correctly. It's very good from what I've heard. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Sounds good.